Hey guys, welcome back to RHR Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Guys, I have such a good show for you today. We're talking Colombia. That's right. That epic disaster of Harry and Meghan's when they went to Colombia. If you're reading along with me, we're in Betrayal, chapter 35, Colombia. And I will be focusing solely on this chapter today as it is juicy. We got to talk about what those two are up to. But first, I need to show you something. When planning today's look, I was like, what would go with Colombia? And I came up with something. Ready? Let me remind you of one of the worst things she wore on this. I can't even call it a tour, on this vacation. Okay, here we go. She wore this. So allow me. So there we go. What do we think? I've taken a bathrobe belt and my sunglasses and a print tank top, and I can also achieve this look. What do we think? Oh, what's that? Cantankerous? He wants to play too? Yeah, he did. Look at that. Cantankerous wanted to get in on this look as well. Cantankerous looking good. Oh man, I had so much fun coming up with this outfit, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, the difference being my look costs all of about $10. Just grab some sunglasses, a 20-year-old bathrobe belt, and throw on a print tank top, and you can achieve this look. Cantankerous achieved his look with a Post-it note and a paper towel. There you go. And then I can't even imagine. We'll get into Megan's insane wardrobe on this trip, but I can't even imagine what this one costs. I'm sure about the same as what mine did. But anyway, hi, I'm glad you're here. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jen. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the thumbs up, and leave me comments, as all of those helps YouTube to recommend my videos. Should I do the whole thing in sunglasses? No, probably not. But anyway, I've just been cracking up when I was planning today's outfit. But thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Again, I'm pushing to the 200. Cantankerous wants to sit here on camera. He looks so good. We might as well let him. I'm pushing to the 200,000, so making sure you're subscribed helps so much, and also hitting that hype button helps so much. Let's get into Betrayal. This book is so good. Now, I realize in real time the book about the Queen just came out, so we have our work cut out for us. Don't worry, I'll get into that too after I finish Betrayal. This book is just so good, and still not many people have access to it, so I want to keep going. And then we'll get into the book about the Queen. I've heard you all loud and clear that a lot of you want to read that. Absolutely. I'm hearing there's juicy stuff about Harry and Meghan in that one as well. So, we got lots to talk about, but let's keep going with Betrayal. Never not funny to me. I even have my Gosling saying that. She'll ask me how my day was, and I'll say, it was good. I read Betrayal. And she'll go, All right, Colombia. Let's do a chapter overview, and then I'll get into some quotes directly from the chapter. Again, this one's juicy. So reminder, this was about August 2024 when they decided to do we cannot call it a royal tour, a vacation to Colombia. Now, reminder, in the last chapter, I talked about how Harry had refused to stay at a palace when he was visiting the UK because of security concerns. But they decided to go to Colombia. Oh my goodness, hypocrisy. Another example of the hypocrisy that they are just known for at this point. So Harry and Meghan were invited to Colombia, this time by Vice President Francia. I think I'm saying that right. Marquez. Now, we're going to get into her. She's very controversial. She is very anti-monarchy and anti-royal family and all the things. They did no research, it sounds like, with this trip, and it shows. Just wait. But they traveled as private citizens, but were, of course, given full VIP treatment. They got into some crazy numbers in this trip about how much it costs. And again, reminder that a huge percentage of the population live in absolute poverty. So, some terrible situations going on there with crime rates and abuse toward women in particular, it sounds like. And again, while these two are preaching what they're preaching and spending all this money and Yeah, it's just them. Meghan, it sounds like, was using this more as a clothing tour. That was really delved into in this chapter. I was surprised because I felt that more from Nigeria, but this one in particular, she saw as a way to launch herself into fashion. I didn't know that. I guess that was going on behind the scenes, but a lot of, she had taken just, I believe it was Harper's Bazaar to this one, and uh, they reported a lot on her wardrobe in hopes that she would get the clicks and maybe make some royalties. So that was interesting to hear. Lots of, excuse me, it was heavy on photo ops on this trip, lots of speeches, staged moments. Meghan, as per usual, centering herself in all of it. The big thing here on this trip was, again, the controversy surrounding this vice president that invited them and Meghan making it about herself. She always does. She always does. But these people have been through serious, again, I mean, he goes into the crimes that they've witnessed, the children that have been deleted because of crime and just terrible situations going on, and these two just roll out like they're at a red carpet event, and Megan's talking about herself being a mother and whatever, milkshakes for her kids, whatever nonsense she's talking about, just oblivious and tone deaf, and again using this as fashion statements. It's always a head scratcher, but this trip in particular, it's really detailed how crazy that was with everything going on in Colombia. All right, let's talk. Let's get into some of the quotes. I'm trying to think of the hypocrisies, though. The big hypocrisies that stood out for me were the cultural appropriation, the tone deaf outfits, completely inappropriate, overly glamorous. If you think about the settings, including events with local communities and schools, thousands of dollars, pounds, all that spent. And she would try to appear connected to Colombian culture, but no understanding, it sounds like, to any of it. The complete hypocrisy, again, of the security. They brought heavy security and complained about safety concerns, yet chose to visit Colombia, a country with significant security risks, cartel violence, high crime rates, substance problem, just everything. This completely contradicts their constant demands for elite protection while claiming they want this private life. Political alignment. They're meeting with this vice president, again, who has strong anti-monarchy, anti-Western establishment views, while they're publicly using their titles and just complete hypocritical optics. This VIP treatment, it's self-promotion over substance. It's more of a PR exercise for the two of them. It's not meaningful humanitarian work. Lots of selfies, trying to be glamorous at these events, and again, media coverage, but there's no tangible impact. If there is, it's very little tangible impact or focus on actual issues. They just lose sight of everything and make it about themselves. Meghan, particularly, and this trip dominated much of the spotlight, often positioning herself as the main star rather than supporting any kind of local cause or charity or anything like that. So, this trip in particular was widely controversial. It's mocked online as rent-a-royal, just like the others, but this one in particular really pointed out that they have no clue what they're doing and no business doing anything like this. It's just two idiots on vacation and nothing more. There's a lot of international criticism for this one, especially because of the extravagant spending, outfits, security, lavish appearances. Let me go ahead and cut to the chase and tell you. Excuse me. You're gonna have to bear with me on my voice because I keep losing it because of this book, but it's worth it. It's so good. I was shocked to learn. Here you go. Do you know how much was alleged to have been spent on this trip? by the Colombian. Well, they kind of dance around it. The way I understand it, we'll say allegedly, spent by the Colombian government on this trip for Harry and Meghan, 2.9 million pounds for this. And that's it sounds like, I mean, he didn't exactly break it down, but based on the way they're talking, the clothes, the travel, the rooms, everything was so expensive, and all the security. They had to have fleets of security. There were parts that they'd go into and they'd have to shut everything down because they were so worried about the cartel, and there'd just be armored vehicles everywhere and people with big, weaponry going on to try to keep them safe. So they're trying to figure out how much was actually paid. There are, again, we're going to say allegedly because Tom Bauer kind of dances around it. So I'm going to dance around it and I'm going to say possibly. There are wondering if, what's his name? George Soros maybe foot some of the bill. Definitely do some Googling there. There's been ties of him and Harry and Meghan throughout. So they wonder if maybe he foots some of the bill. There's lots of questions for this, again, this Marquez, because she submitted that only 44,000 were paid by the government cost, but there's allegations that that's not right. They're thinking Harry and Meghan did not foot the bill, but Tom Bauer does point out if you're invited by a country, that's pretty standard. So in that case, but it's the extravagance in which that's what's being hugely questioned. All right, I just couldn't believe that when I saw it. 2.9 million pounds. I'd like to know details like, did they pocket some of it? I'd like to know that. Were they paid any kind of fees to make these appearances? I mean, I could probably answer this on my own, but I really want to know, like they talk about if the actual royals, promote something, then usually huge amounts of money are brought in for that cause or for whatever. Did anything like that happen with this? I'm guessing probably not. Was any money raised for good causes? Again, I'm guessing probably not. I can tell you that the Sussexes, Bauer points out that the Sussexes had made huge media announcements of their generosity throughout this thing. But I'm on page 321. According to Tom Bauer, Archewell's annual accounts, quote, revealed their donation of about $8,000. So 2 point whatever million pounds, 8,000. Okay, sure. Lots of talk in this one that they were expecting a huge donation out of Harry and Meghan and did not get one. Anyway, all right, let's get into some of the best quotes from this chapter. So, I don't even know where to start. That Marquez is a mess. Again, she's the vice president. I don't pretend to know Colombian politics, but I can tell you based on the things I read in this, they did no homework, none whatsoever. They just heard, hey, we're invited, let's go. So she is a lightning rod for controversy, this Marquez lady. It just sounds like Marquez is on one page, Harry and Meghan are on another. What else is new? They did no homework about each other. Marquez was shocked that Meghan would want to use this trip to promote herself. And I'm like, hey, you really didn't do any homework. And then they had no idea about anything, anything, that she has been seriously questioned about allegations, we'll say big fat allegations, of lots of money being spent on herself, talking about this Marquez, rather than the poor. Allegations of using government funds to build private housing for herself. And there is a quote here that this Marquez is a former housemaid. The quote is, she's frequently condemned by her opponents as the, quote, biggest fraud in the Black community for doing nothing for the poor but spending money on herself. She's known as an anti-royalist. Her critics said she was cynically using the Sussexes to, quote, divert attention from the scandals of a corrupt and violent government. So, know that. That they sound perfect for each other, don't they? She's covered in scandals. These two are covered in scandals. Tone deaf, unaware. It sounds like all three of them. All right. So why wouldn't they just go then and not do any homework? Okay. So they were not allowing any foreign journalists to be allowed entry to any event, with the exception of Harper's Bazaar columnist Bianca Betancourt. That's who traveled with them, along with Archwell's photographer and cameraman, Eric. I won't even try to say his last name. It doesn't matter. So they just traveled, again, with their own photographer and videographer, but the rest was only allowed by Harper's Bazaar. I'm actually surprised that they didn't have People magazine, but I feel like she was feeding stuff back to People, and they probably had worked out something with Harper's. Who knows? I don't care. But it just shows you, again, using the media when it suits them, but not painting the full picture. Tom Bauer went into, basically, I'm summarizing here, and this is my opinion, but it sounds to me like they needed somebody, fill in the blank, dumb, gullible, whatever, that would just report whatever they wanted them to report, like just good stuff, like a huge reception, when in all reality, it didn't sound like that was the case. Tom Bauer went into huge detail about how Meghan it was like she tried to pretend in Nigeria that it wasn't all about the outfits, but this one, let's not even pretend anymore. It was just all about the outfits. Outfit change after outfit change. It was 3 to 4 times a day. And again, they were only there a couple of days. So absolutely crazy the amount spent on these clothes. Right before they left, just remember that Harry's chief of staff, Josh Kettler, he was the 19th employee known. He puts emphasis on, there was a lot that we probably don't know behind the scenes, but the 19th known employee to leave Harry and Meghan's employment since 2020. Other appointments and resignations were not published, so he feels like it was significantly more. I remember that. I believe it was the eve of this trip that it was announced that he had left. And what's funny there is, remember, Harry and Meghan tried to spin it as, oh yeah, it was just temporary. And everybody said, no, it wasn't, because when they made the announcement of this guy being hired on, it was that he was going to, quote, get Harry through the next phase. And it was supposed to be a big, like he was going to stick with them, but he lasted, I think it was less than 3 months, around 3 months, something like that. So there's that. Lots of talk about Harry not being in a good mood for this one. I remember that as well. The thing that I wish Tom Bauer had gone into, he did not, and he does a great job. I'm not criticizing him, but I wish he had gone into, I want to know more what happened with the translator and Harry. I want to know if anybody knows. I'm not saying she did anything. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, clearly Meghan seemed irritated because Harry was having much more fun just talking to the translator than Meghan. And we saw where, do you remember that? Meghan was sitting next to Harry. Harry was sitting next to the translator. He had his arm on her chair. And Meghan started to look over and have her tight smiles. So Meghan had like crossed her legs or did something to try to get attention, and made it where her dress kind of fell open a little bit, trying to get Harry to look back at her. It was kind of funny. He didn't seem very enthused by any of it. But Tom Bauer didn't really talk about that. He did talk about that Harry got in trouble with Meghan because he was laughing with, it doesn't even matter, like somebody else, some guy or something. And the fact that he was having a good time, and she did not care for that. There was another time where he went to speak, and it sounds like he was just saying, thank you for having us, something like that. And she like kind of gritted teeth and side eye, and he shut up real quick. And then she began to speak Spanish. And I'm laughing because the reason that you guys are laughing, which is, that was another thing, is that, of course, she put on a show of speaking Spanish, but then there was all this footage of her needing the translation. So it was maybe performative Spanish, we'll say. Okay, continuing on. Um, Again, a lot about her. Here we go. A lot about her clothing for this. Just totally tone deaf, ignoring the poverty that surrounded them. She brought outfits by 11 designers for every public appearance. She wore, like, I mean, he goes into all the different, like, she wore, I think on the first day, a $2,150 metallic jacquard dress, $875 sandals, jewelry valued about $23,000. And she'd worn this to a panel discussion, and he points out that the room was only halfway full and people didn't care about what they were talking about. They were, quote, more interested in Meghan's metallic outfit. So, I mean, yeah, I just no awareness. That's why there's so many. I mean, obviously, they're not royal. I get it. This was not a royal tour. This was a vacation. But that's why there's so many details that you have to think about if you're doing like an actual royal tour. There's so many details to think about, not being ostentatious like that. That there's so many reasons why this is a terrible idea. And it's just basic things like this. So just not giving a care, not doing any homework or research. I'm just stuck on that. Another thing that they pointed out, again, going into this fashion, because it does fascinate me, is Meghan made a big show of wearing, let's see, she had worn this basket bag hand woven in Rwanda. So she felt like she needed to show it off and make a big show of this. Well, it turns out, oh, and she's giving a speech that says, quote, I really started to understand how many women's lives were being impacted and uplifted through their work, with no idea, no awareness that the women that made the bag that she was carrying from Rwanda, they were living in mud huts, and they earned 10 pence an hour for a total of £2 48 for each bag. The bag was for sale in America for $724, according to Tom Bauer. So while she's giving these speeches, again, totally unaware and tone deaf of what was actually going on. So just keep that in your mind, because it's awful and disgusting, but also funny because she just doesn't. I mean, just zero blanks given, zero. All right. This is where they go into, there was a lot about the security for these two. They went to visit a school and they had to have it locked down. There's armed soldiers everywhere, all about security, because everything sounds incredibly dangerous. I'm not, the places that they were going were sounding incredibly dangerous, and they arrived 3 hours late. So again, that seems to be a theme with the two of them, because I've actually done videos where that's a thing. They like to arrive late to places. I think they think it makes them look important. It doesn't. It's rude. So they were 3 hours late. Remember when they were in Nigeria, she arrived, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 hours late to a women's empowerment group or speech or something like that. And everybody was really, they were mad. And so, yeah, it sounds like just a waste of time and money and all of this. People are waiting because they have prepared for this, and their time's more important. Talking about Harry and Meghan, they seem to think so anyway. So here we go. So here's the part where Harry had started to speak to a student when they arrived at this school, and quote, I'm on page 315. Meghan's eyes closed. Her hands became tightly clasped, and she gave him, being Harry, a sharp look. He nodded obediently and stopped talking. Meghan addressed the student in Spanish. What must that be like behind the scenes? What must she be saying to him? I can't even imagine. All right. The Colombians at that point were realizing that Harry was, quote, cast as the supporting act for Meghan's visit. Was he even a supporting act? I just remember him being there scowling. Okay. So then again, another appearance that involved children. On page 316, it's reported they had visited the, quote, La Giaralda school. I don't know how to say that. Apologies. But local reports that all the children had been ordered to curtsy. So just keep that in mind. They're pretending like it's a royal tour while saying, nope, we're here on personal, but they're using titles and they're having children curtsy to them. The actual royals don't do this. They don't make children curtsy to them. You don't need to do things like that. You understand who you're near with the actual working royals, but these idiots are making children curtsy to them. I just find that completely disgusting. I really do. Let's see. Continuing on, she wore a 5,000-pound sleeveless Oscar de la Renta dress, which was being written up by Harper. Everything was being written up by Harper's Bazaar's fantastic and wonderful and lovely, but again, completely tone deaf for what was going on around them. Harry made little effort to look interested. It sounded like things were getting worse behind the scenes. In fact, it's reported by the third day of this trip, they said Harry had, quote, wilted. I'd like to know what the difference is because he always looks like that. So it became bigger and bigger, the protest against Harry and Meghan being on this trip. There was widespread protest against, quote, the millions spent on the visit. Instead of worrying about the economy that affects everyone, they're worried about bowing to English nobility. That's what somebody was reporting. It was an opponent of this, Marquez was reporting in the papers. A lot of people were protesting this. That morning, the Sussexes arrived by helicopter into Cali, which is reported as the capital of the, I can't say this word because of YouTube, white substances that people like the smell of, cartel. Hundreds of soldiers and police lined the street to keep the public away. So again, that's where so much was spent on this trip. Meghan gave a speech about, quote, human rights, not realizing that her audience lived in a neighborhood infested by, quote, crime and substances. Among the hosts, it sounds like people were having enough. So they talk about some of the hosts, including this Taliana Vargas, who was the wife of the mayor of that area and former Miss Colombia. And they felt like Meghan was starting to gaslight them because she was, again, giving these speeches about women's empowerment and just completely ignoring the actual challenges. It even goes into feel what you want about this Marquez lady, but she had to send her young twin children away because of fear of deletion, as is a terrible problem that goes on with children in Colombia because of the violence. So Meghan's giving speeches about making her kids lunches and stuff and just, again, totally tone deaf and unaware of the actual problems going on around them. They gave a tour to the two. They gave them a tour of this museum that's specifically about slavery. It was a museum tour, and they go into how they had this elaborate tour planned for them, but it lasted, quote, let's see, it was over within 3 minutes. Outside, a red-faced Harry spoke about, quote, an incredibly moving experience. And he goes into how they were attempting to look interested as local musicians played notes and community leaders spoke about their suffering and poverty. But their facade collapsed. They could not even pretend to look interested anymore. Meghan, then this is when we saw that she had embraced and was rubbing the back of Marquez's partner. His name is Yerny Panillo. Meghan was completely oblivious to the effect of her behavior. They started calling it, quote, Flirtgate, and furious about the optics. This is when that the woman that invited him was turning even more, it sounds like, just completely oblivious to the insensitivity of holding on to somebody like that, or why rubbing their back would be a terrible idea. And it sounds like the vice president came up to have words with Meghan, and I'll just read you the quote here. I'm on page 318. She came up to have words with Meghan. She was, quote, furious about what Meghan was creating for her political opponents, with the optics here. The vice president strode angrily toward the couple. Instinctively, Harry stuck his arms out to stop her, but then became conscious of the snapping cameras. So he, quote, turned his movement into a handshake. So I knew that there was tension, and I'd heard that the vice president flipped pretty hard. But I didn't realize that about Harry throwing his arms out, and there you go. I'd love to be a fly on that wall and say, what the hell are you doing? All right. Okay, so a big part of this chapter is going into how they expected that the Sussexes would make a huge donation. They thought that that was the point of coming, is to draw attention to specific causes, and that they would make a huge donation. It's repeated that this Marquez would tell people that when they'd want to know, why are we catering to these two? She would say, here's a quote on 318. The Sussexes, explained the vice president, were expected to make a serious donation to match George Soros's Open Society donations. And again, it turns out that they are alleged to have donated something in the neighborhood of about $8,000. He goes into how Harper's Bazaar, again, was focused so hard on Meghan's outfits, and it sounds like I don't think that's a coincidence. I feel like this was her making this about this, whereas they conveniently left out that there were patchy receptions for them, that small groups were inside of these schools and venues, but the photographer was Archwell's photographer. So again, through the magic of putting people in specific places, it didn't appear as small as it sounds like it actually was. So I thought that was interesting to learn. Let's see if there's anything else of note from this. Meghan gave a speech standing next to this, again, these women who have been through, it's like the South Africa thing all over again, saying, nobody's asked if I'm okay, steps away from a women's shelter. Well, she's doing it again. She's talking about that female voices are not being heard. She moved on then to speak about herself. What else is new? She once again told that soap story, which Tom Bauer called the bogus story. And she went on and told that story, and her source of inspiration, she said, was her mother. And I'm going to read the quote directly from Tom Bauer, page 319. Quote, the same mother who had disappeared for long periods throughout her school years. And then in reply, Marquez described how her mother had lost her fingerprints due to being forced to work in these mines. And as a result of that, she could not obtain a passport to travel. So think about Meghan with her stories of, they took away my passport. Meanwhile, she's globetrotting. And yet, again, feel how you want about Marquez. That is a devastating story to hear. And Meghan's just making it all about herself, focused on herself again. Oh, and then she goes on again, after all these tragic stories, she says, quote, I'm looking at this time as my chapter of joy. So think about that. Just zero awareness of the actual struggles that she's on purpose surrounded herself with, but just no awareness of how that optics might make her look by saying things like that. A lot about, again, the outfits, and it played into that website that Tom Bowers mentioned previously, what Meghan wore. Sounds like allegedly they're working alongside Meghan, and the website could identify different shops selling specific things that Meghan wore, and then Meghan would potentially get a commission or a kickback by doing that. Okay, so this is another sickening part. This is so Marquez brings up that in front of a crowd of people, okay, she stands with those two and brings up her anti-monarchy beliefs. Okay. She says, quote, as one of the world's she's one of the world's campaigners of reparations to, quote, repair the historical debt owed from the colonial powers. So Marquez asks Harry to comment. He obliges. He denounces, quote, the unjust system that had generated wealth for the British crown from enslaved people. Marquez smiled. She was satisfied. Harry smiled. You ready for this? Harry believed, quote, no one in Britain would hear about his disloyal comments. Okay. Tom Bowers not saying this, I'm saying this. That's how stupid that guy is. He believed that nobody would find out while they're using VIP treatment and titles and making people curtsy to them. People always ask, why do you care about these two? Why, why do they bother you? It's crap like this. The way that they treated Her Majesty the late Queen after her years of service. And then they go and act like this and say things like that. It's terrible. They're terrible people. Let's see here. The only other thing of note is on the way back. I wish he had gone into that again. If there was any more juice behind the scenes, he didn't. But I'd like to know what happened with the translator. Again, the translator didn't do anything wrong. She was trying to sit there kindly. But I feel like Harry was being weird, and then Meghan started getting weird as a result. So just wondered about that. But on the plane ride back to California, it's alleged that things were not going well at all, to the point where, who was it? It was their publicist, Ashley Hansen, is reported to have collapsed. Stressed by the long hours, suffering anxiety and depression, she, quote, faced a challenge to balance her life with the Sussexes' demand. So, again, nothing has gone right. Nothing has gone well. And they're, of course, reporting as a success. People are literally dropping from the exhaustion. And then there's a quote from her saying, the flight attendant thought I was actually dead. I was so out, hard sleeping. I did not move the entire time. And then the chapter ends by saying, by the time that she finally awoke, another of the Sussexes employees was already planning her resignation. Dun, dun, dun. And that's how the chapter ends. It was juicy, wasn't it? It was good. I think so too. Let's, as we wrap this up, let's go back to this nonsense. There we go. Looking good, right? Nothing to see here. What? It's good. I look good. I will not hear otherwise. Absolutely crazy. But I thought this was a juicy chapter. I had no idea. I can't stop laughing. I had no idea that much was spent on the trip. I had no idea how much tone deafness was going on behind the scenes. Well, not even behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. Just absolutely sickening and appalling as per usual. I'd like to know if they thought it was a success or if they had any awareness whatsoever about what a disaster this trip was, like everything else they do. I'd imagine that they just bury their heads in the sand and pretend like if anybody reports negatively, they're jealous and or the S word. So curious about that. But you have to let me know your thoughts on this. All of it. Let me know. What do you think of them picking Colombia? What do you think of them being completely tone deaf and out of touch? What do you think of her focusing on her clothing for a trip like this? I mean, what do you think of all of it? Let me know. All right, that is going to do it for me. That's going to do it for Cantankerous as well. Cantankerous, you're a star. You're a fashion icon. And yeah, I can't wait to read your comments on this one and everything else. Let's see, what's the next chapter we got ahead of us? The next chapter is going to be Sidelined, and then Centibale, American Hustle, Vancouver, Meghan as Ever, Contrasting Lines, The Last Calamity, and Make or Break. And then we're done. So not much more to go. Let me know your thoughts on all this. Let me know about the Queen book. I do plan on covering that. From what I'm hearing, it's 600 some odd pages. So I'm gonna get through this book. We're gonna really enjoy this book and talk about it. And then maybe I'll take a little break and then we'll dive into the Queen book. We'll see. That's gonna do it for me. Thank you guys so much for being here. I can't wait to read your comments on this and everything else. And I hope you guys have the best day. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi, how are you? Oh, man, they're tone deaf, aren't they? I need a new word. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do this in real time. What's another way to call somebody tone deaf? Because I feel like I use that word a lot. Let's see. Alternative way. Oblivious, out of touch, insensitive, clueless, tactless, obtuse. I like using the word obtuse. I do use that one. Socially inept, ham-fisted, ham-handed, provincial, sheltered. That's too nice for them. These are all good words. Go ahead and fill in the blank. Let me know what your word for them would be. It could be one that I've mentioned, or you can make up your own. I'm fine either way. Should be fun. All right, that's going to do it for me. I'm going to go ahead and get this guy edited and up, and we'll keep going with this book. I'm enjoying it so much. I'm enjoying your comments so much. You guys are wonderful. Spread the word that I've got the book. I'm hearing it's still very hard to get in America. Come on, Tom Bauer, work on that. But I'm gonna keep going till we finish, and then we'll move on to something else. Thanks so much for being here. I can't wait to read your comments. I hope you have the best day. I love this look. I think this is so cute. I got this from Target. I just thought it was so cute. It's just a little tank top, but I'm trying to pick up a few springy / summery things, and I thought this was so cute. But then it worked out so well, excuse me, for this episode with this nonsense look that she's got going on. But anyway, all right, have a good day. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.